Hello everyone, I'm Greg Otto with FedScoop TV. Welcome to our Cybersecurity Hero Series, and I'm talking with Paul Morris, the Acting CISO of the Transportation Security Administration. Paul, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.
So, can you share with our viewers how you have significantly improved the cybersecurity posture inside your agency?
You know, we've been very effective, I think, in the last year since the cyber sprint let off the direction from the White House. But I think we've seen demonstrable results in about 3 areas that I wanted to share with you. One was, people that we have, the processes that we've changed, and some of the new technologies that we've introduced. I'd start with people. One of the biggest priorities we started with, realizing we didn't have enough people to get after all the new things that were there and the problems we needed to solve. So we reached across, and I made it a purpose of finding all of the cybersecurity professionals throughout the enterprise and creating really a coalition of the willing. Everyone is passionate about what they do, wanting to contribute, and I made it a purpose, and we did as a team, to make sure everybody was consulted. Hey, what do you think the answer is? What would you recommend? And that just got everybody involved, and they felt a part of the entire solution. So it wasn't a compliance view of, hey, this is what you have to do. We formed a team approach, and that really has allowed us to do a lot more, I think, than we could have in the past. From the processes we put in place, this is really as a result of that cyber sprint that launched last year, where we took a hard look at how we were approaching our business. And from the processes perspective, it's like going after the high value assets. We were asked by OMB and the White House to identify those big buckets of data that were PII or special PII, and then take a hard look at those. Well, we created a new program around those that were a little bit harder than the FISMA requirements for compliance. And I gathered the teams and created a way to go forward to say, let's go into the logs, let's do application and infrastructure scanning, let's do more than we typically do on the cycles that we do. We dove into every contract that they had, looking for changes in architecture, changes in how the data flowed in and out of these systems, and gave it a really hard scrub to make sure that they were as secure as they could be. Other processes, I led an executive team to really focus on cyber hygiene. One of the biggest challenges that we all have in the government and industry is, you're never going to completely be patched, but you have to know what the problems are. So it's a difficult environment to bridge knowing what your vulnerabilities are and having a team through either contracts or processes to make sure that you're focused on the right things and having the management at the right level, which we brought to the table to make sure that happened. And we're starting to see some great results there. And finally, I think technology. With the direction that we've had and the leadership we've had from the Department of Homeland Security, that we really wanted to change how we were postured, we had a great result. We went from essentially 0 users in TSA for either privileged or unprivileged users using a PIV card to now we're virtually 99% in both. So we had a huge change there, and that was a huge team effort across the entire enterprise and TSA as a whole. Also, we're introducing tools that allow us to do an instantaneous check of whether we've been infected or not, and at the direction of latest policy directions from the department, looking at how we put in tools to do essentially an isolation of that endpoint to make sure that the user, who is one of the most threats to the enterprise, if he clicks on something or opens something he shouldn't have, it's really isolated right there. So we're getting that through into the system. So all of these things come together of how do we approach that? But the biggest thing I would say is the leadership we've gotten from the department and my boss, the CIO, Steve Rice. He changed his risk lens, and then I did accordingly during our authorization process, where it's no longer a compliance paperwork drill. I mean, it is a hard discussion with system owners and security officers to say, well, do you have a 2-factor in place? We're not going to accept a waiver for something you don't want to fix. And we've shortened the time frames of how long we expect the system owners and ISOs to remediate those problems. And we've elevated what we see in that threat posture in that package up to the offices within TSA who own those systems. So that's had a ripple effect going back. We're harder, we expect more, they're working harder, and that in itself, with all the things that I led up to, I think has changed what we're doing. But we have a lot more to do in the future.
Okay, so as agencies look to leverage new technology, how can they push the boundaries with next generation data security practices? What strategies and tools are you using inside the agency to protect, the petabytes of data that sit in your systems?
I think that naturally goes back to the discussion of the high-value asset systems and our mission-critical or mission-essential systems. We had to identify where were those large holdings, those large petabytes of data, to include in our case at the Transportation Security Administration, the TSA pre-check data. It's very valuable.
Right.
Maintaining that ability to enable the traveling public to do their job, but also our human resources and financial data that supports our agency. Those are just as valuable. So knowing where they are, which we did, we identified those in the high-value asset studies, and we're looking at resiliency. Can we get that back if it's disrupted, and those type of strategies. But we're also, as we start looking at where we're going to move that data and make it available, whether it's from a cloud or in a mobile environment, we're really taking a hard look at how is that data classified, where is it at, who can get to it. We have to take a very granular approach to essentially forming what I call a metadata catalog of where the data came from, how is it classified, and the piece of the puzzle that we need work on is making sure that you get access to only what you need to see. And then and that's in that combination of knowing where the data is and who you are. And do you have that need to know? So those are the kind of tools and strategies we're going to be looking at. And it gets into what you see in government and others of looking at that master data specialist or chief data officer that, because it's different. Somebody thinking about that.
So you highlighted this a little bit in the beginning, talking about the coalition of the willing and getting leadership on board. But how much has that improved the cybersecurity posture inside the agency, and what are you doing inside the agency to drive how people can think differently about cybersecurity culture?
Culture is what people believe. If they believe they can do something or not, it will define their behavior. And I think that, this is much like just after 9/11, we took a lot of time and money to think about how we were going to respond everywhere in the government to the threat of terrorism.
Right.
That's what we are right now. We're in an arms race with an adversary that's very nimble and isn't constrained by acquisition or a budget cycle. And culture is how can we make that change? So I started, and we started that conversation specifically within our team of changing from a compliant always no answer to how can we get to yes. We need to be able to enable our customers and TSA to do its job. And what risks are we putting in place, and how do we look at the system? That in itself is a significant change. We want to be engaged, and we have been out there. And again, bringing together the people that can make a secure solution. So it's outreach, education. We're out there in the TSA enterprise educating our users. We fly out to the airports. We do spear phishing testing, and very successful at just to raise that awareness so that it's outreach, it's constantly talking, it's engaging, and then it's evangelism. We take that up to what I would say is at the last, had the opportunity to brief the executive team on what's the impacts, the choices of making, choosing between an operational risk versus a cyber risk. It has to be weighed in the right way. It's a slow change, and there's a lot of work to be done there, and how we approach building things, buying things, getting contractors to work for us. There's a lot of that culture that needs to change and make sure we have secure systems that we install instead of fixing them on the other end. So
finally, what is the one piece of technology in your mind that agencies have to get right if they are to keep their network secure?
Well, I asked my team that, and everybody looked puzzled for a minute because there's so many challenges that we have.
Right.
And the first one that popped up was somebody said, "Can I have Harry Potter's wand?" And in the absence of that, all the things that we talked to, we're going in the right direction. But the thing that I've been thinking about lately and discussing from a strategic perspective is we have to get identity right.
Okay.
We have to really work hard as an enterprise and across the department and government so that as we move where we have individual applications and data that you log into and log out of, they're brokering who you are to give you access. But we are now going into an era where we're looking to shared services.
Right.
That's a model that we want to see from government and the department down to the agency level. But also when we move into a hybrid cloud and we move our data and services out to the people who need it. In our case, we're a very mobile workforce out there in the airport. So
Right.
giving somebody on a mobile device access to what they need to know when they need it, we need to have a true identity of when you come in. And that gets back to, if I know you're there, then I can look for bad behavior from an inside threat perspective, and I can protect that data and look for anomalies in the system. So we have to move from how do we do it for every system to how do we do it across the enterprise and then seamlessly with other agencies. So that's what we're thinking about as that next step of strategy.
Great. Well, Paul, thanks for sitting down with us and talking about this for a little bit. Really appreciate your time.
You're welcome. Thank you.
For FedScoop TV, I'm Greg Otto. Thanks for watching.